Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard. I'm a member of Christ Central, if you don't know me, and if you're listening on the recording. And today I'm going to be talking about today's passage, which is Genesis 22, verses 15 to 18. And before I read it, I need to give you a bit of context, because it only makes sense when you know what's come before. And this passage comes straight after God tells Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And Isaac says, okay. And then he goes off to the mountain and he's about to get his knife out and he's got his altar ready. And Isaac says, Daddy, where's the ram that we're going to sacrifice? And Abraham says, God will provide. And then he ties Isaac up, he gets his big knife out, and he's about to stab him and then use him as a burnt offering. And God shouts, no, stop. And Abraham looks around, sees a ram with his horns caught in a thicket, and they sacrifice that instead. And after all that happens, we get our passage, which is, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. And that's the passage. Well, I felt like a right mug volunteering to talk once I read this passage, because I think it's one of the most difficult I've come across in the Bible. I can't really think about the promise that's in here, that promise of all nations being blessed through Abraham, which we take to mean blessed through Abraham's descendant, Jesus. All I can think of is what a monster God comes across as, getting Abraham to sacrifice his son. Yes, I know he sorts it all out in the end, but it's a horrible thing to do to someone. And you can just imagine the trust issues Isaac would have going forward after this. It's, you think, what sort of God tells someone to do that? And if that's what God is like, do I want to be on his team? And should he value unquestioning obedience quite so highly as he seems to? So I was sort of in a bit of a fix, thinking, well, what are the positive things I can say about this? So I rang a friend, mainly to moan about the difficulty of the task, not expecting much real help. And she said, I remember reading something like this in a book by Rob Bell, and she WhatsApped some pages from it. And these made me look at the story in a new way, by looking at it as a drama. I think we, particularly if we come from a very sort of evangelical background, tend to look at these stories and try and sort of imagine that we've got a transcript of CCTV footage, that, you know, we've got a transcript of exactly what happened, and it was just like that. Whereas maybe a more useful way to look at it is These are very, very old stories that the ancient Israelites told to explain what they understood about God, and their dramas and their stories. And by looking at them as dramas and as stories, that gives you a sort of slightly different perspective on them. And the first thing that is pointed out is Abraham probably always knows what's going to happen. He's in on this black joke. Because he says to his servants, stop here. We, that means me and Isaac, are off to do the sacrifice now. We'll be back later, implying both of them are coming back. The writer of the Hebrews makes the same point in chapter 11, verses 17 to 18, where he said that Abraham went through with it because he had faith in God that he could raise Isaac from the dead. So he was like completely assured it was all going to be fine in the end. Secondly, this book I was reading puts the story in the context of early religion. And the ancient gods, the gods were worshipped by other people around this time in the Bronze Age, are capricious beings. They're always wanting someone. You sacrifice to keep them happy. And if they're angry, if you don't keep them happy, terrible, terrible things happen to you. And you never know if you've done enough or what they really want. So you give them the best you have. And sometimes that involved human sacrifice. So this story can be seen as a drama about how the God of the Hebrews is not like those other gods. And it starts, and this is why I'm talking about being a drama, it starts about just like all the other God stories of this God wanting the most precious thing Abraham has. But then it twists it. So, you know, it's about leading you into this story. You think you know what's going to happen, and then there's a sudden plot change. God stops Abraham and provides the sacrifice himself. So in this story, the ancient Hebrews are saying, firstly, their God definitely does not do human sacrifices. It's not like the others around them. And their God is different. He is God who gives rather than takes. And he is one who wants our trust and our obedience rather than our sacrifices. And there's echoes in this story of Abraham and Isaac of another story too. Another father who was willing to sacrifice his son, but this father goes through with it and allows the sacrifice to happen. Like Abraham, he is sure that his son will rise again. And unlike Abraham, he has to wait 3 days to see it happen. That sacrifice obtains eternal life for us and heals the rift between God and man. And that is the blessing to all the nations of the earth promised to Abraham. And because we know the story of God giving up his only son to be put to death so well, we focus on the good news it means for us. And we don't really feel the horror of it, the outrageousness of it. Reading the story of Abraham, like I did, and being shocked that anyone, when asked to sacrifice their own son, says, yeah, okay, and gets on and does it, helps me understand the scandalous nature of the cross and the price of our salvation was unbelievably high for the Father as well as for the Son. And we shouldn't receive this salvation lightly. It may be a free gift for us, but still unimaginably costly. And that's all I have for you.